is your favorite color?
It's purple.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Like since birth?
Yeah, I guess. But wait, what's this? What is this contraption? During rehearsals, you never wore one.
Yeah, it's my bra. Sometimes I feel safe to free boob it, but other times wearing a bra keeps me up.
How weird is this conversation?
These are actually conversations we have a lot, except in real life they're not about colors or clothes.
We're going to replay it back for you for real.
Oh, Jessica, why are you so petite?
I have a condition called acondroplasia, which is a form of dwarfism.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Like since birth?
Yeah, since birth. Anyways, what's happened to you? What's with this contraption? During rehearsals, you never used one.
Yeah, it's my rollator. Sometimes I feel safe to free walk it, but other times using a rollator keeps me up.
How unhinged is it to have conversations like this about bras or liking the color purple, but when you replace it with achondroplasia or using a rollator, it sounds normal?
It's because pitying someone for liking purple or patronizing someone for wearing a bra implies these are unfortunate things when they're not. They just are.
We want to encourage you to see disabilities and differences in the same way, neutral.
Not good, not bad.
My name is Jessica Chan. The first thing you might notice about me is that I am shorter than the average height female.
And my name is Sophia Hotung. And the last thing you might notice about me is that I have 7 chronic illnesses. Now, we would like you to raise your hands if you do not think you have a disability.
Great. There's a label for you in the disabled community. You're called a TAB. T-A-B. It stands for temporally able-bodied.
And the funny thing is, although all of us at some point in our lives will transform from a tab into a nab,
not able-bodied,
we collectively know very little about how to act around, talk to, or include disabled or differently abled individuals.
Today, we're going to give you 2 examples of what it's like to live with different health conditions.
And hopefully give you some takeaways so we can all learn to be more inclusive.
Run fast, jump high, lift heavy. I can do all these things. Although my fast may not be your speed, my high is probably not your elevation, and my weights are not your standard bearer. I can do these things on my own. Running 8 minutes a kilometer may not seem very impressive to you, but to me, it's my own personal record. I want to set records, my own records. I found that participating in individual sports has been a great medium for me to find community, but also overcome any fear of judgment and stigma of my own personal attributes. Growing up, my parents didn't treat me any differently, but my journey to self-assurance has not always been this easy. Statistically, it's 1 in every 35,000 people are diagnosed with achondroplasia, which is a form of dwarfism. It means someone with a full torso, shorter limbs, a more petite stature. It's not rare enough where you probably have encountered another shorter person before in your life, but it's rare enough where I'm probably the smallest person in this room. It's rare enough to get stared at, and whenever I encounter kids in public, they will normally sometimes shout, "Mommy, Daddy, why is that lady so small?" It's an innocent question because as kids, you're actually taught to be curious about the world around you. But maybe what isn't so ideal is the response from the caregiver. You see, we've never really had a course on how to treat people with differences. We're not sure what to say, how to act, afraid of offending. And when kids call out these differences, we adults end up saying, "Stop staring, that's rude." And then they try to divert the child's attention to something else, anything else. I actually find this a bit awkward because I either pretend I didn't hear it, or it leaves my presence be dismissed. I prefer and recommend the following approach. Firstly, you can provide them with context. There are so many differently abled people in the world. They don't look like each other. They don't act like each other. They might not even like each other. Secondly, normalize the moment. Yes, there might be a gap in your knowledge. Yes, you might not have the appropriate response, but that's okay. The next time someone asks, "Why is that lady so small?" you can say the following: "Because she just is." It's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, it's neutral. When we start to see differences and disabilities in a neutral way, we actually start to create more of an inclusive world. I remember when I was 9, I wanted to rollerblade so badly. Everybody was doing it, and it became this hill for me to die on. My parents consulted an orthopedist, and during consultation, he turned to me and said, "Well, do you want to rollerblade?" I said, "Of course I want to rollerblade." He turned to my parents and said, "Well, if she wants to rollerblade, she can. She can do it. She's just like anybody else." At that moment, when I got the feeling of agency. I felt independent, heard, trusted, respected. And once you get that feeling at a young age as a person of difference, it is really hard to relinquish. The world does not need to be such a scary place for people of disabilities and differences and limitations. I face life limitations which you may not think about, like reaching for cups on tall shelves at the office, or pushing high elevator buttons at a friend's residence, or adjusting task chairs to an appropriate height, or deciding whether or not I should use a tall lectern during a presentation. But the story isn't so much about how we're different. It's more about how we're the same. I run 5Ks. I do high rocks. I participate in company sporting events. I surf around the world. I lecture at a local university, and I speak on stage. Hello, TEDx! But it's when people inadvertently take my agency that is my biggest challenge. Just last week, I came back from a surf trip from Indonesia when I was waiting for my luggage just to come down the carousel at the airport, 23 kg. I was about to lift it off the carousel when this woman came up from behind me and placed her hands on the bag and said, "Let me help you." "No, thank you. I got it. I can do it." No. Let me insist. I insist. I can help you." No. I got it. Seriously. And this went on, and it got awkward because she had lifted the bag off the carousel and didn't understand why I wasn't thanking her or being gracious about it. You know what? I was annoyed. I was annoyed that she didn't listen to me or believe that I'd be able to do it. She had taken my agency. And I can tell you, at the end of the interaction, neither one of us felt great about it. So I leave you with this. Accessibility is the key. I encourage you to see people, not as labels, assumptions, or stigmas. They'll share with you new lessons, new stories, new points of view in a neutral manner. My point of view just happens to be around 122 centimeters tall.
We're all thinking it. That woman doesn't look disabled. It's because usually we look for physical markers to identify disability. Missing limbs, old age, a wheelchair. But these markers can be stereotypes that overlook invisible disabilities. A disability is essentially any health condition that makes getting through an average day harder. An invisible disability is that too, but these aren't immediately apparent. I have 7 chronic illnesses, but don't show any immediately apparent markers for them. So you might not immediately know. And it actually begs the question, why does anybody need to know? When I was 16, I was diagnosed with my first autoimmune disease. And no one told me, you are now disabled, because nobody thought I was. Calling myself disabled felt wrong even, like I was stealing the name from real disabled people. And by the time I was 24, I had all 7 of my chronic illnesses, but 4 were still undiagnosed. At work, I struggled to hide how awful I felt. And at the time, my office signed everybody up to run a charity 5K. And I pretended to be thrilled, but secretly I was panicking because nobody knew how sick I was. And if I said something now, it would just look like I didn't want to run for charity. But fortunately, before the race, I ended up in hospital. I was there for a month, receiving painful tests and scary diagnoses. But all I could think about was the dang 5K and whether I now had a good enough excuse not to run it. How ridiculous is that? That I had to let my health get that irrevocably damaged before I felt allowed to voice health concerns. In a sense, by trying to make my illnesses invisible, I had become invisible too. I felt scared, angry, depressed. But you know the feeling that ate at me most was shame. Because I had always felt so much pressure to be helpful, to look pretty, and not attention seek. But it's tricky to be helpful when your body needs help. It's hard to look pretty when your organs are pretty much failing. And it's impossible not to attention seek when seeking medical attention. But I didn't know any of that then. So the shame just built and built. I suffered in silence, and I eventually became so sick that I disappeared from my old life entirely. When you're invisibly disabled, you might be relegated to bed, removed from your work life, social life, family life, and all the while told, you're not actually that sick, because you don't look it. You start to wonder if you're hallucinating or lying. I had always seen my disabilities as this enemy, something to fight and conquer. Ironically, all this violent, combative language did was hurt me more than any of the diseases themselves. Consider this. Only when I started accepting my illnesses, asking for help, and taking it without shame, was I able, slowly, to re-emerge from invisibility. My re-entrance into society and my subsequent advocacy work led to this frequently asked question, which is, how do I know that someone isn't faking illness when I can't see it? And this is especially pertinent at workplaces, where employees might sacrifice their health for productivity, or employers may sacrifice productivity for tolerance. Rather than one side making demands of the other, all I can recommend is candid conversations. As an invisibly disabled person, I know not to sign up for work that I can't do, and instead have candid conversations about adjusting expectations, roles, or compensation. I know to ask for specific, timely, and reasonable accommodations by having candid conversations about adjusting protocols, schedules, or environments. And I know sometimes there's not always going to be a space for me. And it's okay to have candid conversations about barriers, boundaries, and sometimes even goodbyes. I'm reluctant to give you all blanket advice for all invisible disabilities. because secretly sick people are not a monolith. All I can do is share my story, and I leave the rest to you. Seek out more data points, more experiences. Share yours. Don't shame yourself, and don't shame anyone else. By doing so, I hope we can establish a new normal where invisible disabilities don't turn us invisible too. Thank you.
So a question we get a lot is, I'm a good, smart human being. I just don't know what to do when I interact with disabled or differently abled people.
So we're going to give you an acronym today, CARE, C-A-R-E, for you to whip out next time you don't know what to do or say.
C stands for complete. Before you say or do anything, see disabled people as whole people, complete people, and approach them neutrally.
A stands for accommodate. It's fine to talk about differences, but when you do, make sure your language accommodates rather than alienates.
R stands for response. Wait for a response. Let the person you're trying to help tell you how they want to be helped.
And E stands for empathy. If someone rejects, dismisses, or corrects you, don't be discouraged, offended, or outraged. With empathy, see this person beyond your one single interaction with them.
And most importantly, at the end,
it's important to see everyone,
tabs
and nabs,
as whole.
Thank you.